In the weeks that followed, Toyosi poured herself into work. She worked late hours, stayed busy with new projects, and avoided any thoughts of Adam or Kachi. But despite her best efforts, the pain lingered. She often found herself staring at her phone, their names flashing across her screen with unanswered calls and unread messages. One evening, Toyosi received a text from Kachi. "Toyosi, please. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need to tell you something important. Please meet me." Toyosi stared at the message, her emotions torn between anger and curiosity. She decided to delete the text without replying. Days turned into weeks, and Toyosi's resolve grew stronger. She moved into a new apartment, a small but cozy space that she decorated herself. It felt like a fresh start, a place free from the shadows of her past. She hung bright curtains, filled the shelves with books, and placed fresh flowers on the dining table every week. Slowly, the space began to feel like home. Her mother visited often, bringing home-cooked meals and words of encouragement. "You're doing so well, my daughter," Teresa said one afternoon as they sat in the living room. "I'm proud of you." "Thank you, Mummy," Toyosi replied, managing a small smile. "It still hurts, but I'm trying." Teresa nodded. "Healing takes time. Don't rush it." One evening, as Toyosi was preparing dinner, there was a knock at her door. She wasn't expecting anyone, so she hesitated before answering. When she opened the door, she froze. Standing there was Kachi, her face pale and her eyes swollen from crying. "Kachi," Toyosi said coldly, "what are you doing here?" "Please, Toyosi," Kachi said, her voice shaking. "I know I don't have the right to be here, but I need to talk to you." "There's nothing to talk about," Toyosi said, starting to close the door. "Wait!" Kachi cried, stepping forward. "I'm pregnant." Toyosi stopped in her tracks, the words hitting her like a blow. She stared at Kachi, her mind racing. "Pregnant?" she repeated, her voice flat. "Yes," Kachi said, tears streaming down her face. "It's Adam's. I didn't want you to find out like this, but I had to tell you." Toyosi felt her legs weaken. She gripped the doorframe for support, her chest tightening with anger and sadness. "Get out," she said, her voice low and trembling. "Get out of my sight." Kachi sobbed, falling to her knees. "Toyosi, please. I know I've hurt you, but I don't know what to do. Adam and we made a mistake, and now everything is falling apart." Toyosi's eyes burned with tears, but she refused to let them fall. "You should have thought of that before you destroyed my life," she said, her voice sharp. "You and Adam deserve each other. I want nothing to do with either of you." She slammed the door shut, locking it before sinking to the floor. For hours, she sat there, her mind swirling with emotions she couldn't even name. In the days that followed, Kachi's words haunted Toyosi. She couldn't escape the image of her former best friend begging for forgiveness, her stomach round with the child she and Adam had created. Toyosi hated that she still felt pity for Kachi, even after everything she had done. Her therapist's words echoed in her mind. "Forgiveness is not for them, it's for you." But Toyosi wasn't ready, not yet. Weeks later, Toyosi learned that Adam and Kachi had moved out of the apartment they once shared. They left no forwarding address, and their attempts to contact her ceased. It was as though they had vanished from her life completely. For the first time in months, Toyosi felt a sense of relief. She could finally begin to breathe again. She decided to focus on herself, pouring her energy into her career and her therapy sessions. Slowly, the cracks in her heart began to heal, though the scars remained. One day, as she sat in her new apartment, surrounded by the warmth of her fresh start, Toyosi allowed herself to smile. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful. Toyosi drove home in silence that evening, her hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. The streets of Lagos were as busy as ever, but she hardly noticed the blaring horns or the vendors shouting their wares. Her mind was consumed by the scene she had just left behind. Adam lying frail on that small mattress, Kachi kneeling in tears, and the children, innocent and helpless. When she arrived at her apartment, Toyosi parked and sat in the car for a moment. The weight of everything pressed down on her. For years, she had carried the anger, the betrayal, and the pain they had caused her. She had buried herself in work, creating a fortress of success around her heart. Yet today, that fortress had cracked. She stepped out of the car, walked into her apartment, and locked the door behind her. The quietness of the space offered no comfort. She sank onto the couch, her head in her hands, and let out a long, shaky breath. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel the depth of her emotions: anger, sadness, pity, and something unexpected: relief. The next day, Toyosi arrived at work feeling drained but resolute. Her assistant, Amaka, greeted her with a warm smile. "Good morning, Ma," Amaka said, handing her a folder. "Your schedule for today." "Thank you, Amaka," Toyosi replied, her voice softer than usual. As the day went on, Toyosi found herself distracted. She couldn't stop thinking about Adam and Kachi, about the little girl's wide, frightened eyes and the baby boy's frail frame. The image tugged at her heart in a way she hadn't expected. By mid-afternoon, Toyosi found herself dialing her mother's number. "Mummy," she said when Teresa picked up. "I need to talk." "Of course, my dear," her mother replied. "Are you at the office?" "Yes," Toyosi said, "but I'll come by after work." Later that evening, Toyosi sat in her mother's living room, sipping a cup of tea. Teresa sat across from her, her face filled with gentle concern. "What's on your mind, my child?" Teresa asked. Toyosi set the cup down, her hands trembling slightly. "I went to see Kachi and Adam yesterday." Teresa nodded. "And how did it go?" "It was worse than I imagined," Toyosi said, her voice heavy. "Adam is so sick, Mummy. He can barely move. And the children, they looked so helpless. I gave them food and some money, but I told Kachi I didn't want to see her again." Teresa reached over and placed a comforting hand on her daughter's knee. "You did more than many would, Toyosi. That was an act of kindness." "But it doesn't feel like enough," Toyosi admitted, her voice cracking. "I thought seeing them suffer would make me feel better, but it doesn't. It just makes me feel empty." Teresa sighed deeply. "My dear, forgiveness is a journey. It doesn't happen all at once, but you've taken the first step by showing them compassion. That's a start." Toyosi looked down, tears brimming in her eyes. "Mummy, how do I let go of the pain?" "You let go by choosing to live, Toyosi," Teresa said gently. "By focusing on the blessings in your life instead of the hurt. And by realizing that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, it means freeing yourself." Over the next few days, Toyosi took her mother's words to heart. She threw herself into her work, but this time, not as a distraction. She began to see her accomplishments not as a way to shield herself, but as proof of her resilience. She also found herself thinking more about Adam's children. Their innocent faces haunted her. Though she didn't want anything to do with Kachi or Adam, she couldn't ignore the fact that the children were blameless. One afternoon, she asked Amaka to research charities that supported children in need. "Find me organizations that work with vulnerable children," she instructed. "I want to make a donation." "Yes, Ma," Amaka replied, eager to help. Toyosi's decision brought her a sense of purpose. She couldn't fix the past, but she could use her resources to make a difference in the lives of others. A week later, Toyosi received an unexpected call from Kachi. "Hello?" Toyosi said, her tone cautious. "Toyosi, it's me," Kachi said, her voice thick with tears. "Adam passed away this morning." Toyosi froze, her breath catching in her throat. "I'm sorry to hear that," she said after a long pause. "He asked me to thank you," Kachi continued. "Before he died, he said you were the only person who showed him kindness. He said he didn't deserve it, but he was grateful." Toyosi's chest tightened. She didn't know how to respond. "I see," she said finally. "What will you do now?" "I don't know," Kachi admitted. "I have nothing left, but I'll find a way to survive for my children." Toyosi's voice softened slightly. "I'll arrange for someone to deliver more supplies to you. But after this, Kachi, we're done. I've done all I can." "I understand," Kachi said quietly. "Thank you, Toyosi, for everything." When the call ended, Toyosi sat in silence, her emotions swirling. Adam was gone, and with him, a painful chapter of her life had closed. The day of Adam's funeral, Toyosi stood at the back of the small gathering, watching from a distance. She didn't want to be seen, but felt the need to say goodbye in her own way. As the ceremony ended, she whispered softly, "Rest in peace, Adam." She left before anyone could approach her, feeling a strange sense of closure. In the weeks that followed, Toyosi continued to heal. She poured herself into her charitable efforts, using her pain to fuel something meaningful. She also began to let go of the bitterness that had held her captive for so long. One evening, as she sat in her living room, sipping tea and watching the city lights, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope for a future free from the shadows of her past. Months passed after Adam's funeral, and life began to take on a new rhythm for Toyosi. She immersed herself in her work, finding solace in the success she had built for herself. Her consultancy firm had become one of the most sought after in Lagos, and her name carried weight in the business community. She attended conferences, mentored young professionals, and even received awards recognizing her contributions to the industry. But beyond the accolades, Toyosi found fulfillment in the charitable initiatives she had begun. Her donations to organizations supporting children in need became a significant part of her life. She often visited orphanages and schools, speaking to children about hope and resilience. Though she rarely thought of Kachi and Adam anymore, their story had inspired her to make a difference. One sunny morning, Toyosi sat in her office, reviewing plans for a new partnership. Her assistant, Amaka, knocked on the door and entered with a smile. "Ma, there's a man here to see you," Amaka said. Toyosi looked up, raising an eyebrow. "Who is he?" "His name is Uzo," Amaka replied. "He said he's from Kingswood Holdings. They're one of the firms interested in the partnership." "Send him in," Toyosi said, adjusting her blazer. Moments later, a tall, handsome man walked into the room. He wore a well-tailored suit, and his confident demeanor immediately caught Toyosi's attention. "Good morning, Ms. Toyosi," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Uzo. It's a pleasure to finally meet you." "The pleasure is mine," Toyosi replied, shaking his hand. "Please, have a seat." As they began discussing the partnership, Toyosi found herself intrigued by Uzo's intelligence and charm. He spoke with passion about his company's goals, and his vision aligned perfectly with hers. By the end of the meeting, they had agreed to move forward with the collaboration. "Thank you for your time, Ms. Toyosi," Uzo said as he stood to leave. "I look forward to working with you." "Likewise," Toyosi replied, offering a rare smile. Over the next few weeks, Toyosi and Uzo worked closely on the partnership. Their professional relationship quickly blossomed into a friendship. Uzo was not only intelligent and driven, but also kind and thoughtful. He often made Toyosi laugh, something she hadn't done freely in a long time. One evening, after a particularly productive meeting, Uzo suggested they grab dinner. "You've been working too hard, Toyosi," he said with a playful smile. "Let me treat you to a good meal." Toyosi hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. Why not? They went to a quiet restaurant overlooking the Lagos waterfront. As they ate, Their conversation flowed effortlessly. Toyosi found herself sharing stories about her journey, her struggles, and her triumphs. Uzo listened intently, his admiration for her evident. "You've been through so much, Toyosi," he said, "and yet you've built an incredible life for yourself. That's inspiring." "Thank you," Toyosi replied, her cheeks warming slightly. "It hasn't been easy, but I've learned to focus on the things that matter." "And what matters to you now?" Uzo asked, his gaze steady. Toyosi thought for a moment before answering. "Peace, purpose, and maybe companionship." Uzo smiled. "Those are good things to hold on to." As the months went by, Toyosi and Uzo grew closer. Their friendship deepened, and it became clear to both of them that there was something more between them. Uzo was patient, never pushing Toyosi to move faster than she was ready. He respected her past and admired her strength. One evening, as they strolled through a park, Uzo turned to Toyosi and said, "Toyosi, I know you've been hurt before, but I want you to know that I see you for who you are, a strong, intelligent, and beautiful woman, and I would be honored if you let me into your life." Toyosi stopped walking and looked at him, her heart pounding. For years, she had built walls around herself, afraid to let anyone in. But with Uzo, those walls had slowly begun to crumble. "I've been scared to let someone in again," she admitted, "but you've shown me that not everyone is out to hurt me." Uzo smiled. "Take your time, Toyosi. I'm not going anywhere." Their relationship blossomed over time, and Toyosi began to open her heart again. Uzo was unlike anyone she had ever known, gentle yet firm, supportive yet independent. He reminded her that love didn't have to be painful. It could be a source of joy and growth. One evening, Uzo invited Toyosi to dinner at his home. As they sat on the balcony, watching the city lights, he pulled out a small box. "Toyosi," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "You've shown me what it means to truly care for someone. You've taught me that strength and vulnerability can coexist. I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Toyosi's eyes as she nodded. "Yes, Uzo, I will." Their wedding was a beautiful celebration of love and new beginnings. Toyosi wore a stunning white gown, her natural hair styled elegantly. Uzo couldn't take his eyes off her as she walked down the aisle. The ceremony was attended by close family and friends, including her mother Teresa, who couldn't stop smiling. As they exchanged vows, Toyosi felt a deep sense of peace. She had been through heartbreak, betrayal, and pain, but she had emerged stronger and found love again. After the wedding, Toyosi and Uzo settled into a happy life together. They continued to grow their businesses and supported each other's dreams. Toyosi also remained dedicated to her charitable work, using her success to uplift others. One day, as she sat in her office, looking out at the bustling city, she reflected on her journey. She had faced unimaginable pain, but she had also discovered resilience, purpose, and love. Her past no longer defined her. It had shaped her into the woman she was today, and for that, she was grateful. Lesson from the story. Life can sometimes bring deep pain and betrayal from people we trust the most, but holding on to that pain only keeps us trapped. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or allowing those who hurt us back into our lives. It means letting go of the anger so we can move forward. This story teaches us that even when life breaks us, we can choose to rise again. Focus on building your own happiness, and don't let the actions of others stop you from finding peace. Remember, true strength lies in overcoming your past, finding purpose, and being open to love and joy again. Always choose growth, because your future is brighter than any pain from your past. Thank you for watching this story on Afro Tales TV. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up Leave us a comment and share with friends and family. We have more beautiful stories coming your way, so subscribe and stay tuned. See you in the next one.